They called him the Legend, a colonel who'd never lost a mission. But when enemy armored vehicles had them trapped behind a cliff in hostile territory, even he knew they were finished. Only a miracle could reach that far. He shouted in desperation, staring at the command vehicle controlling the assault from over a mile away. No one moved. No one except her, the quiet specialist whose expertise he'd dismissed for months. Without a word, she climbed the exposed cliff face, took aim with her custom rifle, and fired once. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy military stories of unsung heroes, consider subscribing for more tales of extraordinary courage in the face of impossible odds. Colonel Marcus Brennan surveyed the rugged desert terrain through his field glasses, his weathered face betraying nothing of the tension flowing through his body. 29 years of combat experience had taught him to conceal his concerns from the troops. Behind him, his elite strike team prepared their gear, voices hushed as sunrise broke over the disputed territory. "Williams Chen, with me," he called, summoning his most trusted officers to review the mission parameters one final time. Major Williams spread the tactical map across a flat rock surface. "Sir, our intelligence confirms the prisoners are being held here." He indicated a facility nestled in the canyon below. "The militia forces have 4 checkpoints we'll need to bypass." Lieutenant Chen nodded confidently. "My squad can handle the outer security, sir." Among the soldiers checking equipment nearby, Specialist Diana Pierce quietly observed the briefing while inspecting her modified precision rifle. At 36, her features carried the focused intensity of someone who calculated everything: distances, angles, probabilities. She approached the officers with a small tactical notebook in hand. "Sir, I've been analyzing the terrain's impact on our approach vectors. These canyon formations will create unpredictable wind currents that could affect our precision capabilities," she said, her voice steady but measured. "Focus on your equipment check, Specialist," Brennan interrupted without looking up from the map. "We've got the tactical assessment handled." Pierce's expression remained neutral as she nodded and stepped back. She returned to her position, pulling out a small digital calculator and making additional notes based on her observations of the terrain. When no one was watching, she made minute adjustments to her rifle's sighting mechanism. Major Williams glanced briefly at Pierce before returning his attention to the colonel. "Sir, what about air support if things go wrong?" "Unavailable in this sector," Brennan replied. "We're operating independently for this one. Clean infiltration, minimum engagement. Get in, secure the prisoners, get out. The militia forces are well equipped but poorly coordinated. We have the advantage of superior tactics and discipline." The officers nodded, confirming their understanding of the mission objectives. As they dispersed to brief their respective teams, Pierce continued her solitary work, measuring angles with a small protractor and noting wind speeds in her weathered notebook. Private Martinez, a fresh-faced soldier barely 8 months into his deployment, approached Pierce with hesitation. "Mom, is there something wrong with the standard equipment?" Pierce glanced up, surprised that someone had taken an interest in her work. "Not wrong, just imprecise." She showed him her notebook filled with equations and diagrams. The standard targeting systems use generalized calculations that don't account for terrain features or atmospheric anomalies. Martinez peered at the notes, clearly lost among the complex mathematics. "And that matters. It can mean the difference between hitting your target and missing by 20 meters, Pierce replied. "In these canyons with these wind patterns, the standard calculations are off by nearly 25%. "How do you know that?" A faint smile touched Pierce's lips before quickly disappearing. "Experience." As the day progressed, the unit moved through the rocky terrain toward their objective. Pierce kept to herself, always observing, always calculating. When they crossed a high ridge with a clear view of the canyon below, she paused longer than the others, taking detailed notes on wind patterns and distances. Lieutenant Chen noticed her lingering. "Pierce, keep up. We're not sightseeing?" "Yes, sir," she replied, quickly rejoining the formation, but not before taking one last measurement with a small laser rangefinder that she tucked back into her gear. That evening, as the unit bivouacked in a sheltered ravine, Pierce sat apart from the others. Under the dim glow of a tactical light, she meticulously maintained her weapon, checking and re-checking calculations in her notebook. Young Private Martinez approached again, curiosity overcoming his shyness. "What are you working on, Specialist?" Pierce glanced up briefly. "Wind compensation formulas. I'm accounting for the temperature gradient in the canyon and barometric pressure changes at various elevations." Her fingers traced invisible trajectories in the air. The crosswinds between these canyon walls create a Venturi effect that accelerates airflow approximately 28% above standard models. which means conventional targeting systems will fail to account for lateral drift over distances greater than 900 meters. She continued explaining complex ballistics mathematics until Martinez's eyes glazed over. He nodded politely before retreating to join his friends by the small camp stove. "What's her deal?" one of the soldiers asked as Martinez returned to the group. Martinez shrugged. "She's really into math, I guess. Something about wind and angles. Heard she requested transfer to this unit specifically. Colonel didn't want her," another soldier added, "but command insisted we needed a precision specialist. She ever see combat? Who knows? She never talks about herself." Across the camp, Pierce could hear their conversation, but gave no indication she was listening. Instead, she removed a small cloth bundle from the bottom of her pack. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing several medals and commendations. Her fingers traced over an embossed emblem, an Olympic symbol alongside a military crest, before she quickly rewrapped them and buried them back in her pack. No one had asked about her background since she joined the unit 7 months ago, and Colonel Brennan had made it clear that he had no interest in the specialized knowledge she'd tried repeatedly to share. Near the command area, Brennan reviewed the next day's approach with his officers. "We'll move out before dawn. Approach from the western ridge. The prisoners are held here." He pointed to a building on the tactical display. "Williams, your team will secure the perimeter. Chen, you'll handle the extraction." "What about the specialist, sir?" Williams asked. "Where do you want Pierce positioned?" Brennan barely glanced in Pierce's direction. "Keep her with the support element. I don't want her theoretical calculations complicating the operation. She seems to know her stuff, sir." Williams ventured carefully. "She's not field tested with this unit," Brennan replied firmly. "I don't care what credentials she came with. In my experience, academics don't belong in tactical operations." Williams nodded, knowing better than to argue with the colonel. "Yes, sir." After the briefing concluded, Major Williams found himself watching Pierce as she worked alone by the light of her small tactical lamp. Something about her methodical precision intrigued him. Unlike most soldiers who maintained their weapons out of duty, she worked with the focused intensity of someone pursuing perfection. He approached, standing quietly until she acknowledged his presence. "Major," she said without looking up. "You've made some modifications to your rifle," he observed. "Anything I should know about?" Pierce finally looked up. "I've adjusted the sighting system to account for the specific environmental conditions in this region. It won't affect the operation." Williams studied her for a moment. "The colonel doesn't like surprises, specialist." "I'm aware, sir. You've tried to brief him on your adjustments before." "19 times in 7 months," she replied, her voice neutral, revealing neither frustration nor anger. Williams raised an eyebrow. "That's precise." "I am precise, Major. It's why I'm good at what I do." "And what exactly is that?" "Your file is surprisingly vague for someone assigned to this unit." Pierce carefully placed her weapon down and met his gaze directly. "Long-range ballistic problem solving in complex environments." "Sir, I calculate what others assume is impossible." Before Williams could respond, the radio crackled with a message from their forward scout, reporting all clear at the next checkpoint. He nodded to Pierce and returned to his duties, making a mental note to look more closely at her personnel file when they returned to base. As darkness fell completely over the camp, Pierce finished her preparations and secured her equipment. Tomorrow would test them all. She closed her notebook and stared into the darkness beyond their camp, mentally calculating trajectories across the canyon below. Something about the mission parameters troubled her, but she had learned months ago that Brennan was not interested in her concerns. She would be ready regardless. She always was. The mission collapsed 70 minutes after dawn. Contact front. "Heavy armor." The forward scout's voice cracked through the radio as the first explosion rocked the canyon. Brennan cursed, grabbing his field glasses. "What is that?" The intel said light vehicles only. Instead of the expected pickup trucks with mounted guns, 3 armored vehicles emerged from concealed positions. One at close range, another moving to flank them, and a third larger and more sophisticated, directing operations from a ridge almost a mile away. "Fall back to defensive positions, Charlie team," Brennan ordered as enemy fire intensified. "Williams, get those wounded moving." The unit scrambled backward toward a rocky outcropping, helping 2 injured soldiers. Bullets kicked up dust around them as they dove for cover behind the cliff face. Major Williams checked his GPS tracker. "Sir, our extraction team is pinned down by another enemy unit. They're at least 50 minutes out." Brennan's jaw tightened as he assessed their deteriorating position. "Options, people. I need options." The officers huddled together, debating increasingly desperate strategies. While Pierce observed the enemy positions, she pulled out her notebook, making rapid calculations as she studied the command vehicle through her specialized scope. Lieutenant Chen ventured, "If we split into 2 teams, we might be able to circle around to the north." Brennan stopped mid-sentence as Pierce approached with her notebook extended. "Sir, I've calculated a firing solution for the command vehicle. If we can disable it, the other units will lose coordinated tactical control." Brennan barely glanced at her notes. "Get back in position, specialist. This isn't a time for theories." Pierce retreated without argument, returning to her observations. The nearest vehicle had broken through their forward position, forcing the remaining soldiers to fall back further, carrying the wounded to safer ground. Private Martinez crawled to Pierce's position, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "They've got us pinned down good, haven't they?" Pierce didn't take her eyes off the distant command vehicle. "For now." "You look like you've got something in mind," Martinez said, noticing her intense focus. "The command vehicle is controlling the other 2 remotely," she explained quietly. "Look at their movement patterns. Too precise, too coordinated for independent operators. They're using an automated tactical system." "How can you tell?" "The signal antennas on the command vehicle and the way the units maintain perfect triangulation despite terrain obstacles." Martinez peered through his binoculars. "That's the big one way back there. It's got to be over a mile away. 743 meters accounting for elevation," Pierce corrected. "That's well beyond our effective range. According to standard military ballistics tables, yes." Martinez looked at her with sudden understanding, "But not according to your calculations." Before Pierce could respond, a shell exploded nearby, showering them with debris. The radio crackled with desperate updates from their scattered forces. Extraction was now impossible until the vehicles were neutralized. The unit was effectively trapped. Major Williams joined Brennan behind a large boulder. "Sir, we've got 3 more wounded. We're running low on ammunition and the enemy keeps advancing." "What about air support?" "Still unavailable in this sector. Too much anti-aircraft risk." Brennan paced behind the cliff, his composure finally cracking. "That command vehicle is controlling everything electronically," he shouted in frustration, pointing to the distant vehicle. "If we could just disable it, we'd have a fighting chance. But it's impossible. Only a miracle could reach that far with our equipment." In the momentary silence that followed, Pierce quietly shouldered her modified rifle and checked her calculations one final time. Without a word to anyone, she began climbing up the exposed face of the cliff. Private Martinez noticed first. "Sir, Pierce is climbing the cliff." Brennan turned, his face registering shock as he spotted Pierce reaching the top of the outcropping, completely exposed to enemy fire. "What is she doing? That's suicide." Every soldier watched as Pierce calmly knelt on the cliff, setting up her rifle with precise, practiced movements that spoke of thousands of hours of training. Enemy fire intensified, kicking up rocks and dust around her position, but she remained focused, making final adjustments to her weapon. "Someone order her back," Brennan demanded, but his voice lacked conviction as he watched her work with unnerving precision. Major Williams stood transfixed. "Sir, I think she knows what she's doing." Brennan's radio crackled again. "Sir, we've lost contact with Team Delta. The nearest vehicle is approaching your position from the east." The situation was deteriorating by the second. Brennan looked back at Pierce, who had now fully set up her position atop the cliff. "Martinez," Williams called. "What was she saying about the command vehicle?" "Something about it controlling the others remotely," Martinez replied. "She said she had calculations for a shot. At that distance." Chen scoffed. "Impossible. Standard effective range is 900 meters max." Atop the cliff, Pierce blocked out everything, the explosions, the shouting, the approaching vehicles. Her world narrowed to her scope, her calculations, and her target. She made minute adjustments to her modified rifle, accounting for elevation, wind speed, temperature, and a dozen other variables that most soldiers never considered. As she prepared to fire, brief images flashed through her mind: years of Olympic biathlon training, calculating wind effects while skiing between shooting stations, late nights in the Stanford ballistics lab, proving theories her professors insisted were impossible. 4 tours in classified operations where her calculations had saved countless lives. None of it acknowledged in her current assignment. She focused her scope on the command vehicle's most vulnerable point, the communications array. The distance was extreme, the margin for error non-existent, but the physics were sound. Her calculations were correct. She knew it with absolute certainty. Pierce drew a deep breath, held it for precisely 3 seconds, and squeezed the trigger. The projectile launched with a distinctive crack that made every soldier below look up. Its trajectory arced high above the canyon, seeming to hang in the air for an impossibly long moment before beginning its descent toward the distant target. Time slowed as every eye tracked the projectile's path. Even the enemy fire seemed to pause momentarily. Major Williams unconsciously held his breath. Private Martinez whispered a prayer. Colonel Brennan stood frozen, field glasses fixed on the command vehicle. The round struck with devastating precision. The command vehicle's communications array exploded first, followed by secondary explosions that engulfed the entire vehicle. Flames and black smoke billowed upward as ammunition cooked off inside the armored hull. For a moment, absolute silence fell over the battlefield. Then a cheer erupted from the soldiers behind the cliff. Pierce calmly collected her equipment and slid back down to their position, her face revealing nothing of the extraordinary feat she had just accomplished. Brennan stared at her, momentarily speechless. When he finally found his voice, all he could manage was a single word: "How?" Before Pierce could answer, the tactical situation demanded their attention. The two remaining vehicles, suddenly operating without central coordination, began moving erratically. One stopped completely, its turret rotating in confusion. The other continued forward, but at a significantly reduced pace. "They're running on backup systems," Pierce explained, her voice calm and professional. "The automation is disabled. They'll be operating manually now with limited visibility and no tactical coordination." Williams saw the opportunity immediately. "Sir, we can outmaneuver them now." Brennan nodded, his tactical mind quickly adapting to the new situation. "Williams, take your team around the eastern flank. Chen, set up an ambush position here. We'll force them into a crossfire." As the officers moved to execute the new plan, Brennan turned back to Pierce. "Specialist Pierce, I want you on overwatch. If you can make that shot, I want your eyes on everything." "Yes, sir," she replied simply, already moving to a position with the best vantage point. Within 30 minutes, the unit had successfully disabled one vehicle and forced the other into retreat. The extraction team, no longer pinned down by coordinated enemy fire, was able to reach their position. As they prepared to evacuate, Major Williams approached Pierce, who was helping load the wounded onto the transport vehicles. "That shot," he began, searching for the right words. "I've never seen anything like it." Pierce checked a bandage on one of the injured soldiers before responding. "It was just mathematics, Major. The right calculations at the right moment." "It was more than that," Williams insisted. "Why hasn't anyone in the unit heard about your background, your expertise?" "I've tried to share it," she said simply. No one asked the right questions. Before Williams could respond, Brennan approached them. The colonel's demeanor had changed completely. The dismissive attitude was gone, replaced by something approaching respect. "Specialist Pierce," he said formally, "when we return to base, I'd like a full briefing on your ballistic system." "Of course, sir," she replied. "The same briefing I've been requesting for 7 months." Brennan had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Yes, that one." Back at the forward operating base, the unit's return created an unusual stir. Word of the impossible shot had traveled faster than their transport vehicles. Colonel Brennan sat in the command center reviewing Pierce's complete file. His expression changed as he read through pages that had somehow never made it to his attention before. Specialist Diana Pierce, former Olympic biathlon gold medalist, PhD in advanced ballistics from Stanford, principal developer of the XR9 guidance system. 4 citations for valor in classified operations. He looked up at Major Williams. "The XR9 is the guidance system we use in our next-generation missiles. She designed it." "Yes, sir." She requested this assignment specifically for field testing her new ballistics algorithm. Brennan closed the file, realizing the full magnitude of his error. He had dismissed her not because of any failing on her part, but because of his own preconceptions. In the medical bay, Pierce sat patiently as a doctor treated shrapnel wounds on her shoulder. When Brennan entered, she looked up calmly. "How's the shoulder?" he asked. "Functional, sir." Brennan pulled up a chair. "I've just reviewed your complete file." "I see. Why didn't you tell me who you were?" he asked quietly. Pierce met his gaze directly. "I did, sir. Every day for 7 months." The words hit with the precision of her earlier shot. Brennan felt their impact and knew they were deserved. "I should have listened," he admitted. "Yes, sir. You should have. Your shot saved the entire unit today. I've never seen anything like it." "Thank you, sir. How did you know it would work?" That distance was well beyond any conventional rifle range. For the first time, a slight smile appeared on Pierce's face. It wasn't conventional. "I've been modifying the rifle since I arrived. The adjustments compensate for environmental factors that standard systems ignore. And you've been trying to brief me on these modifications." "Yes, sir, along with recommendations for implementing similar adjustments across all unit equipment." Brennan shook his head. "I owe you an apology, Specialist." Not necessary, sir. Results speak for themselves. He stood and extended his hand. When you're cleared by medical, I'd like that briefing, the full briefing. And I promise I'll listen this time. Pierce accepted his handshake with a nod. I'll prepare the materials, sir. 4 days later, Pierce stood before the entire unit command staff in the base's main briefing room, explaining her modified targeting system in clear, precise terms. The standard calculations ignore micro, terrain effects on wind patterns, she explained. In canyon regions like the one we operated in, these effects can alter projectile trajectory by up to 32% at extreme ranges. So your modifications compensate for these effects? Lieutenant Chen asked. Precisely. By incorporating real-time atmospheric data and terrain mapping, the system can calculate accurate firing solutions at ranges previously considered impossible. From the back of the room, Colonel Brennan watched with a mixture of admiration and regret for the months of expertise he had ignored. When the briefing concluded, he stepped forward. Thank you, Specialist Pierce. Effective immediately, you'll lead the implementation of these modifications across all unit equipment. 2 months later, Pierce stood at attention as Brennan pinned a commendation medal to her chest. Specialist Pierce demonstrated exceptional courage and skill under the most adverse conditions. Brennan announced to the assembled unit. Her actions saved countless lives and turned what could have been a devastating defeat into a successful mission completion. He paused, looking directly at Pierce. More importantly, she reminds us all that excellence does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes the most exceptional talents are found in those we have failed to truly see or hear. The specialist, who had been invisible for so long, now stood in the spotlight she had always deserved, not because she had demanded recognition, but because her quiet excellence had finally become impossible to ignore.